Mark had always been fascinated by dreams. Since childhood, he'd wake up with images burned into his mind, strange places, odd creatures, landscapes that didn't belong in the waking world. Each morning, he'd reach for a notebook, filling its pages with every detail he could remember. Dreams became his escape, his sanctuary where nothing could hurt him and nothing was beyond. As he grew older, his fascination became more deliberate. He studied lucid dreaming, learning how to control his visions, how to bend the dream world to his will. Mark could fly above mountains, dive to the ocean's depths, even alter the flow of time. In his dreams, he was in control until he wasn't. The people in his dreams, at first they were only shadows, extras moving through the background. Mark barely noticed them. But over time they began to change. They lingered, watched him, their eyes following his every move, blank stares, frozen expressions, yet somehow aware. Mark brushed it off as imagination. It was his dream, after all. What harm could they do? One night, he found himself in a place that felt wrong. The air was thick with fog, the streets twisted and narrow, lined with old buildings that looked forgotten by time. A single gas lamp flickered in the square, casting long shadows across cracked stone walls. The buildings loomed over him, ancient, their faces dark and hollow. Mark had dreamed of many places, but this town, this felt different, like it had been waiting for him. He moved through the fog, hearing only the soft echo of his footsteps. Figures moved slowly through the mist, dressed in clothes from another era, faces pale and lifeless. He tried to ignore them, focusing on his surroundings, but every face turned toward him, eyes empty, yet locked onto him with unnerving intensity. And then he saw her. An elderly woman sat alone on a bench near the center of the square, her face hidden in shadow, her posture stiff. Mark felt a strange pull to approach her, as if she held some answer he desperately needed. He walked over, stopping a few feet away, his voice barely a whisper. "Where are you from?" he asked. The woman lifted her head slowly, deliberately. Her skin was stretched tight over her skull, her eyes bulging, unblinking. Her smile, it wasn't a smile of kindness. No. It was a smile of malice, a grin that seemed to pierce right through him. "We are from where you cannot leave," she whispered, her voice low, gravelly, scraping against his mind. A chill washed over him. He took a step back, heart pounding, but the figures in the square had already turned. Their faces were blank, eyes hollow, yet they stared with an intensity that made his skin crawl. And then, in unison, they began to chant, their voices low, blending into a haunting hum that pulsed with the flicker of the gas lamp. "We are from where you cannot leave. We are from where you cannot leave." Mark's hands shook as he tried to wake himself up. He closed his eyes, focused, shouted, but nothing worked. The dream held him, a trap tightening around him. He backed away, trying to escape, but the figures, they moved closer, their faces twisted into unnatural smiles, dead eyes fixed on him. Panicking, he turned and ran, his footsteps echoing as he raced through the narrow streets. The fog thickening, the shadows stretching out as if to grab him. He took corner after corner, but every path brought him back to the same gas lamp, the same empty faces watching him. It was as if the town itself had come alive, twisting and turning to trap him in its endless looping embrace. He ran until his legs burned, until he could barely breathe, but the streets led him nowhere. The gas lamp flickered in every corner, its light dim and haunting, the shadows reaching for him, pulling him back. There was no way out. Finally he saw it, the edge of the town, where the cobblestone streets faded into a dense, dark forest. Without a second thought, he plunged into the woods, branches clawing at him, tearing his clothes, his skin. The chanting faded, replaced by the thudding of his heartbeat, the crackling of leaves beneath his feet. He ran until he stumbled, collapsing in a small clearing, gasping for air. For a moment he thought he'd escaped. The town was far behind, and he was alone. But as he lay there, catching his breath, he noticed something. Something was wrong. The ground beneath him, it was too soft, too alive. He looked down, realizing with growing horror that the earth was writhing beneath him, moving as if it had a life of its own. Before he could stand, the ground gave way and he was swallowed by darkness, pulled into the depths. And then he woke up, or so he thought. He found himself in his bedroom, his heart still racing, his skin slick with sweat. The clock on his bedside table glowed faintly, 3:33 a.m. Relief washed over him until he reached for his lamp, and his hand passed through it like smoke. A cold dread crept over him as realization dawned. He hadn't woken up. He was still there, still trapped in their world. The bedroom door creaked open, and Mark froze. The elderly woman from the town stepped inside, her twisted grin even wider, her hollow eyes fixed on him. Shadows filled the doorway behind her, silent figures watching, waiting. "You asked where we are from?" she whispered, her voice soft, mocking. "Now you know." Mark tried to scream, but his voice caught, strangled by terror. The figures moved closer, steps slow and deliberate, their faces twisting into grotesque smiles, eyes aglow with dark intent. The chant began again, filling the room, echoing inside his mind, louder and louder, each word a weight pressing him down. "We are from the dream, and now so are you. We are from where you cannot leave." The floor shifted beneath him, pulling him down, dragging him back into darkness. As he fell, the last thing he saw was the woman's face, her eyes blazing with cruel intent, her whisper filling his mind one last time. "We are from where you cannot leave." Mark's body lay still in bed, eyes open, frozen in a hollow stare. His mind, his very soul, was trapped in that fog-choked town, bound by the dream he could never escape.